Two. Hello, and welcome to the Global Day of Jewish Learning. My name is Rabbi Peretz Wolf-Prusan. I'm speaking to you from the JCC in San Francisco. This is just one of the places where the Hamaqom Bay Area Jewish Community Talmud Circles meet. We have groups sitting right now in Berkeley and Palo Alto and San Francisco, where I am, and in Marin. We've kind of consolidated our groups into 4 sites. I'm going to give you a quick spin to see who's sitting with me here in San Francisco. We just come, whoop, maybe not. Actually, we're not going to take a quick spin. Take a little spin. Hang on one second. And we're just going to come around.
Oh, that's fun.
You get Hiroko? All right. And we are back here. So there is a source sheet for today's learning. I'm just going to say, I'm going to do a welcome and then turn over in segments first to Rabbi Jennifer Clayman, who is sitting in Palo Alto with her also Los Gatos group, and then over to Professor Deena Aronoff, who is in Marin, and then finally to Rabbi Dorothy Richman, who is in Berkeley. And then I'll come back and say goodbye in about less than an hour. So this is our kind of our Talmud Nation moment, united by learning. We are in Ta'anit, ostensibly a text in the Talmud dealing with drought and fasting. This was chosen actually by our Talmud Circle community after we finished the study of Brachot. The community wanted to investigate theodicy, God's presence in the world. What do we do in the face of disaster? How does the Jewish community respond when things don't go as planned? Basically, resilience. Tragically, in California, this was inspired by and turns out to be a continuing issue where it's not so much, well, it is drought, which we came out of and may be tipping towards again. It's been fire, and following fire, flood. So we have had very intimate discussions, especially with our Santa Rosa and Sonoma County Talmud Circles, about how we respond in God's world to devastation and privation. Where we are right now in Ta'anit, in the theme of the Global Day of Jewish Learning, speaking volumes, is speakers and the quality of the speaker. This is taken from the Mishnah in Perek 2, Daf 15, Amud Aleph, or 15a, where the Mishnah describes a ceremony, which if we don't get rain soon here in California, we may have to use. And it's a ceremony in which the community in the street brings out the Aron Kodesh, brings out the ark, and puts ashes upon it, puts ashes upon the head of the court, the Av Beit Din. They put ashes on the head of the Nasi, the head of the community, and on each and every member of the community puts ashes on their own heads. And then a zaken, an elder, addresses the community. Not any one individual, but the entire community, and tries to tell them a story, which the Mishnah gives an example of communities who've turned themselves around, ethically and morally. That's how the Mishnah opens. Where we are in the Gemara, and where Rabbi Clayman is going to pick up in just a few moments, is the Gemara takes a radical turn to not just look at the content of what comes out of our mouth, but who is speaking, and what have they said before, and what is their life like? In other words, character. That the character of the instrument affects the sound of the prayer. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Palo Alto and Rabbi Jennifer Clayman, who leads our Los Gatos Talmud Circle, and there she is.
Hey everyone, welcome to
welcome to Palo Alto. You can actually see our group on a different camera, so everyone waves so they know which group is Palo Alto. There we go. So when you look at that group, you're seeing what I'm seeing. And we're going to start with a text, not from the Talmud, but one that's referenced in the Talmud, a text from 1 Samuel, where the people have requested that they be given a king. And Samuel is very upset about this, and he has an interesting way of trying to let the people know that they've done the wrong thing by requesting a king. And so the text in 1 Samuel, this is 1 Samuel chapter 12, starting with verse 16. The text says, and this is the prophet Samuel speaking, "Now stand by and see the marvelous thing that Adonai will do before your eyes. It is the season of the wheat harvest. I will pray to Adonai, and he will send thunder and rain. Then you will take thought and realize what a wicked thing you did in the sight of Adonai when you asked for a king." Samuel prayed to Adonai, and Adonai sent thunder and rain that day, and the people stood in awe of Adonai and Samuel. Now, why is it a bad thing? Why is it a punishment for rain to come at this time? Well, we've learned from our earlier study in Ta'anit that you really don't want, when you pray for rain, you want it in its season. You don't want it at the wrong time of year. And here, it is the season of the wheat harvest. This is a time when excessive rain will actually damage the crops, so you don't want rain then. Samuel prays to God. God sends rain and thunder with the potential of ruining the crops, and he does this to let the people know that in their desire for a king and expressing their desire for a king, they've done the wrong thing, and God and Samuel are showing the people that they have been, quote unquote, wicked. So now we look at our Talmud text, and the Talmud text, this is from Ta'anit, Daf 24 Amud Aleph, in the Steinsaltz volume of Tractate Ta'anit. This is on page 139. And in this story, we have, this is in the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya decreed a fast and prayed for mercy, but rain did not come. He said, lamenting, "How great is the difference between the prophet Samuel of Ramah, for whom rain fell even when he prayed for it in summer, and myself, Yehuda ben Gamliel. Woe to the generation that is stuck with me, with this leadership. Woe to him in whose days this has occurred. He grew upset and rain came." So here, this is a fascinating story, right? And in some ways, it echoes a lot of what we see elsewhere in Ta'anit. We see a ritual act designed to produce rain. In this case, it is prayer. The ritual act doesn't work. And then something happens in the heart of the character, and that is what makes the rain come. And that is a fascinating aspect of Tractate Ta'anit. And I think what I would ask, and you know, I don't like to just be up here talking. One of the things that I love about Talmud Circle is the fact that everything that we do is incredibly interactive, and that's really what makes our Talmud Circle sessions so delightful is how we discuss the texts. And so I guess what I wanted to do is, with the folks who are here in Palo Alto today, you know, to ask you what you make of this story, what you make of the connection between the story and the text in 1 Samuel, and you know, kind of what do we learn about the Talmud's view of the person who is asking for rain. So, and I'll repeat what people say so that everyone online can hear. So anyone have any thoughts about that? What do you make of the text? Anne?
The text is broken as example from Samuel. Samuel is calling down rain as punishment.
Uh-huh.
And here you're going to see is needs rain to have survival. And yet he's invoking this moment when rain is a punishment.
All right, so Anne is raising a very interesting point, which is that in the first Samuel text, Samuel is actually evoking rain not as a good thing, but as a punishment. So it's interesting that our text even brings that example when what is really needed in our story is the good kind of rain. Steve.
Yeah, in keeping with that, when he first calls down for the rain and invokes him with Samuel, he laments his failure and comparing himself to Samuel. But as soon as he says that what's upsetting him is not that he doesn't compare to Samuel, but that he's failing in his leadership.
Okay, so Steve makes the point that in a sense, the point of what Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya says, who is not, by the way, Rabbi Judah Hanassi, as somebody different. The point that he is making is actually not that it's really not about how he compares with Samuel, right? That the real point is that, you know, there used to be leaders like that in our community, and how awful is it that my community is stuck with someone like me? Rachel.
I'm just remembering what we talked about last month. When we talked about the rabbis coming out into the street, and we got to a place where we were talking about their incredible humility to do that. So that's where I see a connection here.
So Rachel points out that she's remembering a discussion from the last Talmud circle where there was an emphasis on the humility of the sages who would go out and pray for rain. And I realize that our time is winding down here, and I need to pass the baton here. But I want to just emphasize what Rabbi Peretz said at the beginning, which is that, you know, what is going on with the speaker? What is going on in the heart and in the character of the community's representative, that ultimately that is what moves God to make the rain come, right? And by the way, I'll end by saying this. I just think it's fascinating that in all of these, in so many places in Ta'anit, in our high holiday liturgy, and elsewhere in Talmud, we see a tension between the effectiveness of ritual and well, I'll put it this way, that Ta'anit lays out a series of things that we are supposed to do when there's a drought. And the community in this first story is doing those things, and they don't work, right? And our liturgy, especially on the high holidays, is actually filled with examples of texts that tell us that all the ritual that we are doing for high holidays actually doesn't work. And that what we need to do is repent. We need to change who we are. We need to change something about ourselves, and that is ultimately what makes the difference. Going back to what Peretz said in the beginning, the story that is told in the Mishnah is a story of a community that changes its ways, not because, and this is the community of Nineveh in the book of Jonah, the reason that they are forgiven is not because they put on sackcloth and ashes, even though they do that, but it's because they do teshuvah, it's because they repent. So with that, I will finish and I will turn things over, I believe, to Deena, yes?
Hello, everyone. I want to thank all of the staff at Hamaqom for coordinating this, and at the Olive Society, and over here at the Osher Marin JCC. We're in the expert hands of Debbie Handler, one of the participants of this group, in making this such a beautiful opportunity to expand the circles of our Talmud circle. And I thank you, Jen and Peretz, for your teachings. And I just want to pick up on patterns in the Talmud, because one of the benefits of this Talmud study that we've been doing for so many years now is that we get the opportunity to begin to notice rabbinic style, and to observe the ways in which the rabbis write and think, their personality, even if you want to personify the Talmud. And that's a vantage point you really can only acquire when you engage in regular study. And so this series of stories that appear in the 3rd chapter of Ta'anit are stories that have a certain, I almost want to say, a folk motif, a folk style, which is inversions. You would think that it's the greatest sage of the community that will have the greatest effects in prayer. Or to pick up on what Jen was teaching, you would think that it'll be our greatest public demonstration of piety that will move the heavens to bring rain. And you would think that it's the greatest master teacher whose idealistic insistence and aspirations is going to move God and even the young child, as we'll see in a moment. But each time, the story seems to be that it's this small act, and the anonymous person, and the child who might not be learning exactly in the form and structure that, you know, is expected in the school system. We'll see that in a moment. Those are the moments, those are the actions that make change, which I think is very inspiring for us at a time when there seem to be so many systemic and structural challenges, and to hold on to a sense of our own power and agency to make positive change in the world. So the texts that, and I want to thank Peretz for identifying such rich material for us to study today. The text is still continuing in the series that Jen began our studies with. In the Steinsaltz volume, it's page 141, actually 140. Those of you studying somewhere else on the globe, that's the beauty of the Talmud. You can find it anywhere. It's 24b in Ta'anit. And it really is just on the heels of the text that Jen taught us, another series of, I want to remind us even of how fairy tales work, Cinderella, or going back into Torah stories, young King David. Robert Alter, when he teaches the David stories, he often says, everyone falls in love with David. Like, how do we meet him? Well, we meet him a few times, but he's the young shepherd boy out in the fields that the father even forgets to bring before the prophet Samuel. And then he shows up and he's so beautiful. And you're so surprised that this youth could achieve such greatness. That the delight that we get in stories where the forgotten person on the margins is the one who becomes the hero. These stories move in that same direction. They inspire us. So the first text is on page 140, as I said, and it's the story of Rabbi, which in the Talmud, often if Rabbi appears without any attribution, then the assumption is that this is Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Rabbi declared a fast, but the rain did not come. And this is how Agadah works. It's so beautiful. And the story just shared a world of information with us with one trope that it will repeat again and again. A great sage, the great sage, declared a fast. The rain did not come. That's the problem. The greatness of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi did not seem to affect the effectively bring the rain. And then Ilfa showed up. And I think I remember talking about this with Peretz at one point. Ilfa, and some say Rabbi Ilfa. I would argue that that little insertion, some say Rabbi Ilfa, is actually some effort to correct for, well, it's a little uncomfortable. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi declared a fast and the rains did not come. And then so-and-so, Mr. Aleph, so-and-so, without any honorific at all, is the one who effectively brings the rain. So you can see there's some effort actually to reduce some of the difference between the status of these figures. But let's read it as Ilfa, Aleph, anonymous person comes and prays. And that person prays the liturgy, oh, that God should bring the rain, makes the wind blow, and the wind blew. Such sparse language. I'm always in awe of the storytelling capacity in Agadah. If you're looking at the text, you can see even in the Hebrew how small this is. Amar Mashiv Haruach, we're on page 140, second paragraph from the top. The third Hebrew line, Amar Mashiv Haruach Unashav Zika. It's very poetic. The person said Mashiv Haruach, and then it's almost like a translation into the Aramaic, and the wind blew. Morid HaGeshem, and as if it's just a simple translation from his Hebrew utterance into the Aramaic, which is the lived vernacular, the experience of the rain, and the rain came. Look at how beautifully symmetrical that is. It's as if when Ilfa came up, everything dropped back into alignment. You say Mashiv HaRuach, and the winds come. And you say Morid HaTal, and the moisture and the rain comes. And then the drama of their encounter. And so Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, presumably, that says to him, what have you done? Or what is what are your deeds? My ovadach. If we had more time, I would now turn to everyone to say, how would you translate that? So I invite everyone to look at that simple question. My uvdach, what have you done? How do you have this power? And Ilfa answers, I live in an impoverished city in which there is no wine for Kiddush or Havdalah. I go to the effort of bringing wine for Kiddush and Havdalah, and I therefore enable people to fulfill their duty. So my question is, and we'll leave this as a question, what is this deed that it would be so powerful as to restore the alignment between the human want and need for rain and a divine response? And that's the question that I think there are some rich answers. Let's keep reading. I have 2 more minutes here. The next text, similar. The Gemara relates a similar incident. Look at the beautiful translation that we have here in the Steinsaltz edition. Rav, so look at that, it's a pairing. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, the great Tana who brought the Mishnah together. Then we have Rav, the founding Amora of the Babylonian Academy. Rav came to a certain place and decreed a fast, but the rain didn't come. Do you see the efficiency of Agadah? The great sage establishes a series of fasts because presumably there's a drought and there's no rain. And then the prayer leader who comes before the community says, Mashiv Haruach Unashav Zika. Says Morid HaGeshem Ve'ata Mitra. The same poetry returns, the same Hebrew to Aramaic, from your utterance to a immediate response. And then the question, same question, my ovadach. I almost want to say, what's the mechanics of how you are able to reach God in this way? And his answer, I am a teacher of children. If we have any teachers of children, preschool teachers, elementary school teachers, woohoo! You guys are the heroes of this story. he says, I teach text, specifically biblical text, to the children without means, the poor children, the same as those of great wealth. And anyone who can't afford to pay, I don't ask any payment from them. And I have a fish pond, and I ask you in the last minute that I have, just go with this image, just go to that fish pond. I just read Ruth Calderon's essay about this, so it's full in my mind. Go to the fish pond, okay? And anytime there's a child who's recalcitrant, who's struggling in the school, in the structures of schooling, I take the child there, I bribe the child, meaning I delight them, I settle them into the pleasures of the pond, and this child gets calm, organized, regulated. That's that word, the word of Seder. The child gets regulated there and calmed until that child can then come back and read. So I'll hand this over now to our next teacher, who I think will continue with this series. I think it might be Dorothy Richman in Berkeley.
Hello, friends. Wow, thank you to all of my colleagues for fantastic learning. I'm going to jump right into text study 3 and hopefully build on what we were just hearing about the fish pond. Now we're moving forward to daf 25b, and in your Steinsaltz, this is if you want to follow along in your own text, it's on 146, and it's going to be the last 2 paragraphs on 146 if you have Koren. But your sheets will be fine too. So I'm just going to dive in. Tanu Rabbanan Ma'aseh, right? So we know that we're going to have a story, another narrative. This time it's Rabbi Eliezer. Shegazar shalosh esrei taniot al tzibor v'lo yarduk shamim. He has 13 fasts, which is what we've been learning about, right? The first set of 3s, the second set of 3s, the last set of 7, all 13 have happened, and the rains haven't fallen. We've gotten to the end of our script, and we don't have rain. What do? And everybody just starts to leave. You know, you can imagine them out on the town square, covered in ash, the ark outside, and everybody starts to go home. And Rabbi Eliezer says to them, "Tikantem kvarim la'atzmechem." Have you prepared your graves for yourselves? That's all he says. Have you prepared your graves? And then gu'u kol ha'am bivchia. Gu'u is this amazing verb, right? It's like it has this sense of like coming from the very innards and bursting out. And the people burst out in tears, and then the rains fall. And so I just want to point to a truth in this text, in the images of the text, which is what makes the rain come is moisture from the people, right? It's the tears that come out of the people that call forth the rains. And this is very consistent with a later mystical idea, right? That you need an arousal from below to make an arousal from above, right? So that in this idea, it's the very act of humans making water through their eyes that bring out the waters of the heavens. And by the way, looking backward to the 2 texts that we were learning in Marin just a minute ago, right? Notice that the tools that were used in both cases dealt with liquids, right? It was wine for Havdalah and for Kiddush. And then the beautiful fish pond, which comes as such an unexpected image, right? And so I think there's this sense of showing us that it's not our words, right? It's some sort of real response that's needed, not just the script. And then of course we have one more, Shuv Ma'aseh b'Rabbi Eliezer. So again, we have another story about Rabbi Eliezer. And this time he's davening, Shirad Lifnei Teva, V'amar Esrim V'arba Brachot, and he said the 24 blessings, exactly what he was supposed to do, following the script again, right? V'lo nana, and he wasn't answered. Nothing happened yet again. And now Rabbi Akiva took a turn after him. And instead of following the script, he improvises. And he says, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, Ein lanu melech ela ata. We have no king except for you. Avinu Malkeinu, lemanecha rachem aleinu. Our Father, our King, for your own sake, have compassion on us, have mercy on us. And the rains fell. So this is really great. They got what they wanted. But the next thing, interestingly in the text, again, the way they tell the story, it's so fascinating. There's no, and so everyone celebrated, or everybody, everybody danced in the rain, right? What matters in the text? Well, what does that mean for Rabbi Eliezer? The social, that's what's brought up, right? Because the next line in the story is, Havum ranane Rabbanan. Oops, everybody's like whispering amongst themselves, oh, look what Rabbi Akiva did, and how is Rabbi Eliezer feeling, and, what's happened with the status, such to the point that God needs to answer these murmurings. Yatzta bat kol, and so this disembodied divine voice comes and says to them, look, lo mipnei shezeh gadol mizeh. It's not that one is greater than another. That has nothing to do with what's effective. I'll tell you what's effective. Ela shezeh ma'avir al midotav v'zeh eino ma'avir al midotav. And what I want to tell you is translation is great, but it's limited. And ma'avir al midotav certainly can be translated as forgiveness, as showing forgiveness, but it's so much richer as a phrase. What does it mean to be ma'avir al midotav? If we break it down and we look at that word ma'avir, right? To cross over, to change, to transform your character traits, right? It's not necessarily just being forgiven, but it's moving. It's making a move from where you were to somewhere else. It's transformation. And it requires, I'm suggesting here, some exertion, some kind of real change, which reminds me in the first verse of the Tarachna, right? Of the effort that's required, in the second text of Ilfa, who troubles himself, right? Who makes sure people have wine for Havdalah and for Kiddush, right? There's some idea that on one hand, we actually have to do something internally, al midotav, not just our behavior, right? Ilfa is the example of amazing behavior, right? And then our teacher, right? The prayer leader, these are examples of people who are like amazing in their maasim, in their actions. And here we get the sense that actually something internal has to happen. You have to be moved to tears. You have to be moved to actually change who you are internally. Ma'avir al midotav. And in a sense, that's a sense of power for changing your insides. And at the same time, the person who's saying it is also saying Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, and recognizing that there's an amount of surrender in this move, right? And maybe that's part of what the internal ma'avir is look, I'm going to do everything I can because I can't do anything. Because ultimately, Avinu Malkeinu, you're in charge, and really, it's up to you. And so we have this sentence in the translation, God responded to Rabbi Akiva's forgiving nature in kind by sending rain. But that's not in the text at all, right? And so I think in a sense, we're left with that important question that is continually poked and pricked at through all of these texts in a way is when you get to the end of the script and you get to the end of the known, what works? And I love actually that the final answer, at least in this text, leaves so much open about what those internal processes really are and what matters. Thanks. I'm back to Peretz.
All right. Well, that was breathtaking. Let's see, let me make sure I get this. Hi. So clearly I have the best job in the world. That's all there is to it. I get to work with wonderful, wonderful, wonderful students and teachers and students. And the best that Hamaqom can do is when the teachers and the students change places. In most cases in the Talmud circles, that's what we strive to accomplish. But for right now, I want to thank everyone who took part this morning, and for anyone who shared in this today. This is not passive material. This is the heart and soul of Heschel. This is the heart and soul of Hasidism. This is the heart and soul of so many Ashkenazic and Sephardic and Mizrahi teachers who keep reminding us and driving us back to do basically as Abraham Joshua Heschel wanted to express to young people, to think of your life as a work of art and create the best masterpiece that you possibly can. And that means it's not just what you learn to say and what you've memorized to recite and the data that you know, but the very character of your life is the instrument that affects the sound of your prayers and your thoughts. And it matters. It matters. So on behalf of all of us at Hamaqom and all the students and teachers of the Bay Area Community Talmud Circles and our great friends and collaborators at the Aleph Society of Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, I thank you very much for joining us, and shalom.